This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And you have arrived at the 200th episode of the Creep Street Podcast.
Whoa, everybody, it's 200. We talking 200.
That is right. 3.5 years since the beginning.
Ooh.
200 episodes later.
Here we are.
Folks, we have arrived at your main event.
Yes. This has been one we've been wanting, we've been craving, we've been lusting, and we've been toying with, and we've also been teasing about. So I'm excited to really reveal and learn all about this wonderful topic.
Well, let's tease them a bit more and tell them that you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Threads at Creep Street Podcast. We are also on Twitter at Creep Street Pod, or X, as it is now called.
Oh, yes.
We also have a TikTok, folks. Go check that out. Now, last week, we gave them, for episode 199, we gave them Phantom TV broadcasts. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was a goddamn blast.
I mean, literally, it was flawless. And I had a great time through and through. And I know that everyone else that listened just absolutely loved it so much.
Amen.
That they wrote about it in their journals.
Tell them, sister, please.
Yeah, so thank you big time for listening to that episode, my friends, my citizens. And if you haven't listened to it yet, when you get a chance, give it a listen. I think you're going to like it.
And before we get started, I just want to say, Maureen and I want to say,
yes,
thank you all to the citizens of the Milky Way, to our Patreon subscribers,
yes,
to those who aren't subscribed to our Patreon, to those who are listeners who have been listeners since the very beginning. Mm-hmm. You know exactly who you are.
Yes.
This would not be possible without you. We love you, we thank you, and we are eternally grateful to you.
I mean, it's just so amazing to me, and I know we've mentioned this before, but it's just amazing that just through this podcast, and also the wonders of social media, we have been able to connect with people in we're in the U.S. and we're connecting with people in the U.K., South Africa, Argentina, the Philippines, all over the place. Those are just a few examples. And it's just amazing that we are able to, have this great community and just learn and be weird together.
Absolutely. It has meant the world to us. And guess what? How about another 200, folks?
Minimum.
This train is going to keep on rolling, and it's not gonna stop.
Yeah. And we just wanted to let you know that I am starting a new little project here with Creep Street. It is going to be a monthly book club. Yes, I am so excited. We're going to have a book every month, and I will post a YouTube video every month about it, and we can all comment on it, talk about it, all that good stuff. I am so excited. So it's all going to be on the Creep Street YouTube page. It's going to be free. You don't have to pay for it or anything like that. I will announce the book for next month very soon because we are going to always discuss the book at the end of each month. So we're not going to do September because it's just, it's too much. So our book will be for the end of October, and I will be revealing that in volume 2.
Now, Maureen, we've beat around the bush a little too much.
Yeah, it's getting a little crazy, getting a little strange.
For our 200th episode, Maureen, what is the focus of today's story?
Today's episode is all about a phenomenon, a being, an experience that we have been talking about and hinting at and just mentioning truly for years.
For years.
And we thought for episode 200, we wanted to get large and we wanted to get in charge.
That's right.
We are talking about Mothman. There you go. I'm very, very excited about this. This is an episode that truly we have been kind of waiting to do because it's just like such a big episode. It's such a major topic that we just kept putting it off,
This is the center of everything.
Yeah.
Everything in Creep Street universe revolves around the Mothman.
That's right.
This is one of the most important topics we have ever covered.
Well, yeah, this is one of those topics that it kind of shows a lot of what we kind of say is that what we think is like a lot of these experiences or these beings or these feelings or whatever, that they are all connected in some kind of way.
Yes.
And you'll see that this episode is not just about a spooky man in West Virginia.
No.
It goes so much deeper and it touches so many different topics. And I'm really excited to get down and dirty, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
And dare I say, we've already met the Mothman. We've met the Mothman in the Grinning Man.
Yeah.
We've met the Mothman in the Van Meter Visitor.
Yep.
We have met the Mothman in ways we don't even understand. Mo and I don't even understand yet.
I know. I've done so much research for this episode, and I still am torn. I still have so many questions. I still want to know more. There's still so much to dive into. I mean, there's no end to what you can learn and what's possible with this. It's really cool.
And Maureen, before you give us our sources, I want to give a shout out to my beautiful, talented wife for working nonstop around the clock for over a month getting this episode prepared.
Well, thank you. That is very nice of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Gosh darn it. We're just cute.
Yes, we are.
Just for the haters out there.
For the haters.
We're cute.
We
Get
are.
over it.
Maureen,
Yeah.
Sprinkle us with your sources.
Absolute. Now, we have a bunch of different sources today. Now, one is an article from West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and the title of the article is Mothman Legacy Has Ties to Ancient Folklore, and that is by Eric Douglas. Then we have a wonderful article from Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, and it is called An Ode to a Hometown Creature, Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and that's by Gwen Mallow. And now we have another article, and I'm excited about this one. This is from the College of Psychic Studies.
Oh, wow.
And we've talked about this a lot. It's in the UK. I'm glad that we're finally talking about it. And the article there is called Who or What is the Mothman? And it is by the College of Psychic Studies, just the whole college.
My God.
We love it. Now, we still got a couple more. We've got the book, the main book, the daddy of it, and is The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. Then we have another book called Mothman, The Facts Behind the Legend by Donnie Sargent Jr. and Jeff Wamsley. We also got Mothman fandom online, of course, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention just one of the loveliest sources, and that is a wonderful article written by my dear husband, Dylan James Hackworth, for the DePaulia. And the article is called, Has the Fabled Mothman Made Chicago Home? So I bet you weren't expecting that.
That's right. I wrote that article for the DePaulia newspaper.
Yeah.
Back in April of 2020. Oh, actually, exactly a month before the first episode of Creep Street launched.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Wow. We're just absolute freak shows. Now, to start off this episode, I think it would be lovely to start it with a quote from John Keel himself. And if you don't know who John Keel is, don't worry. We'll get there. And this is the quote. Nothing in the paranormal world is as it seems.
Simple, yet astute.
I know. I was just like, okay, I like it. So, a lot of you probably know about Mothman or have some kind of idea about Mothman. And if you don't, of course, that's okay too. But Mothman, as we said before, is something that is so intrinsic and is so important to, you know, the paranormal world and what we think about these things. But also it's just a cultural thing that people know, even, you know, muggles or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so this very interesting, and it's exciting that a cryptid like this could really capture, you know, the attention of the U.S. and possibly even outside the U.S. It's very cool. So the majority of our story here today is going to be in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. No.
Ever heard of it?
Ever heard of it? Yeah. Well, they also every year, you know, have a wonderful Mothman festival.
Yes, they do.
Dylan and I have not gone, but we hope to go soon because it looks amazing. Mm-hmm. But outside of Mothman, it is just, you know, your classic working class town. The Mothman situation, I do think kind of it raised it up a bit, which we love.
Absolutely.
Which we love, but it's very interesting. You know, for those of you who may not remember this, West Virginia is in Appalachia.
Yes, it is.
And we had our episode a while back about high strangeness in Appalachia. And I think it's very much in play here because West Virginia is the only state that is fully in Appalachia. It covers the whole thing. So the whole state is very wooded. It's very beautiful. I mean, the nature is very beautiful. Unfortunately, the, you know, infrastructure, it cannot be as beautiful sometimes, but the nature is beautiful. But it's also very strange sometimes, and it's very misunderstood.
Yes.
And West Virginia is not Midwestern, it's not Southern, it's not East Coast. It's its own thing. It's neither here nor there.
That's right.
And that is something that we have talked about many times on the podcast, where places like that are kind of hotbeds for this paranormal or strange activity.
Absolutely.
West Virginia is kind of a state that people don't really think much about, don't really know much about, and just kind of write it off. Wrongfully so. You should never do that, you know, about anywhere, but just that is the truth kind of how it is in West Virginia. And it's interesting. There are a lot of abandoned coal mines and there's a lot of caves.
Yes.
Both of those are very attached to paranormal activity. These are not attached to paranormal activity, but it just kind of shows you that life in West Virginia it can be very tough. It has the 7th highest cancer rates in the U.S., and it has the highest per capita deaths due to opioids.
Oh, boy. And that's saying something, because there's lots of death of opioids in every state.
Yeah. It's very sad. It just shows you how it's the symptom of a much larger problem. And I mean, it is itself a large problem as well, but it's just crazy because I don't know all of the details about this. I would love it if, you know, anyone out there who's listening, it knows more. Feel free to, you know, reach out to us on our socials, or you can email us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com. But I believe that a lot of kind of testing, for lack of a better word, was kind of done to the people of West Virginia.
That is true.
Like miners, coal miners, not
Right.
young,
Not people
not
below
children.
18.
Miners would have a lot of really intense chronic pain because their job is very hard on their body, hard on their lungs. And so they were kind of some of the first people to really get opioids.
Right, absolutely.
And they kind of tried it out on them. And as you can see, that wasn't a good idea.
It didn't stop them from spreading it even wider.
Yeah. So, and I've heard that it's not just this. I've heard that the government really has done terrible things to the people of West Virginia in
Yes.
terms of testing things on them, in terms of doing things to their environment that they do not consent to or against their will. We kind of mentioned this before too in our high strangeness episode, and I don't believe this obviously, but a lot of people believe or think that, just people that live in West Virginia are just kind of, hillbillies and you don't need to take them seriously.
Right.
And, they're just kind of, they're in their own world kind of thing.
Right.
But maybe because of that, or maybe it's a coincidence, or I don't know, there's a ton of UFO sightings, orb sightings, really all sorts of paranormal activity, but a lot of UFO activity.
Absolutely.
And because these people that live in West Virginia aren't taken seriously, a lot of people don't really listen to their reports or their claims about these things. So it just kind of goes to show that, in a way, these people kind of are in their own insular kind of community. They're dealing with their own things, and the outside world isn't as much aware or
Yes.
taking them seriously, which is wrong.
And it's true, on a serious note, the things that have been committed on the poor rural communities of this country, especially in Appalachia, I mean, it is disgusting
Yeah, it's sick.
and largely ignored.
Yeah.
By what you would call the upper crust of society, all those assholes.
Yes, fuck that. Now, something that is very interesting, not a bummer, about West Virginia is that there are a lot of burial mounds in the area.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there used to be more, and the colonists came in and were, heinous and, destroying, desecrating, burials, and it's insane. But there's a lot of burial mounds there, and they come from thousands of years ago. And it's just so funny because even though it's not a pyramid, obviously, but it's kind of that similar shape to a pyramid. And obviously that is very important in, ancient Egyptian culture, Mayan culture, cultures all over the world. Ireland, as well as the UK, there are fairy mounds all over. And it's just funny that places all over the world kind of are doing the same thing, and it makes you wonder, what are they doing? How do they know to do that? Did someone tell them to do that? Did they learn that if they do that, something will or won't happen?
Right.
It's fascinating, and that's kind of an idea that we're going to talk about later, about getting a little push from an outside source, getting a little help.
Absolutely.
From someone who knows. So we'll get there. But now I think we got to talk a little bit more about the history of Point Pleasant.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way.
And we're not going to get too crazy. We're not going to get too cuckoo. We're really just going to cover this one part that I think is especially relevant to the story.
Absolutely.
Back in the 1700s, like mid to late 1700s, the governor, or whatever the fuck they were called during the British rule in North America, I'm pretty sure that it was the governor. His name was Lord Dunmore, and there was a big war that took place in, the Point Pleasant area, and it was called Lord Dunmore's War. And it was mainly against the Shawnee and Mingo tribes between 1771 and 1774. I love history, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to be honest, I don't know a ton about, this specifically. I don't know. So I can't say with full certainty, but I can say with instinct that this man is a chode.
Absolutely.
That we hate him.
Absolutely.
An absolute chode.
Chode mode activated.
Yeah. Apparently, he didn't really want to sign a treaty or whatever at the time with the Native Americans, which was really just about, the colonists wanting to move west and get more land and take more territory, and the Native Americans kind of saying like, hey, you can't do this and this and this if you're gonna, encroach on our land, which, is insane. And he was just like, no. And he decided to just have an all-out war instead, which is it's just fucking stupid.
It's chode mode.
It's just so fucking dumb. And so even though Lord Dunmore's group, his army or whatever, militia, their main enemy was the Shawnee tribe, but for whatever reason, a group of these colonists just went ahead and just brutally and heinously murdered a family that was a part of the Mingo tribe. So, in retaliation, a Mingo chief named Logan killed and scalped 30 colonists and then joined the Shawnee against Lord Dunmore. And it's not just, like the equivalent, of a soldier. They killed kids.
Right, real pieces of shit.
Yeah, I understand why the Mingo chief was like, scalp the motherfuckers. I completely understand, honestly.
Give them a haircut.
Come on. So the battles continued, and the killing was it was awful. And the bloodiest battle of this war seemed to have taken place in Point Pleasant. Now, this was a lot of, just as a reminder, war is bad all the time.
Absolutely.
It's never good. It's always traumatic.
It's always shitty.
But in the 1700s, similar to what we were kind of saying a little bit about, when we talked about the Civil War, when we were talking about Gettysburg, a lot of this is hand-to-hand combat. This is intense.
You can't just call in a drone strike willy-nilly in the 1700s.
Exactly, and hundreds of people died on both sides of this war. But eventually a treaty was signed, but in 1777, the American Revolution had officially begun. And, there was some, issues going on because, now I'm not totally sure about the Mingo tribe, but it seems to me, if I'm correct here, that the Shawnee tribe, some of them at least, were really considering or had already committed to kind of joining the British side.
Okay, interesting.
Because a lot of the British told them that, they would give them or allow them to keep a good amount of their land and protect their land as, the colonists moved west. Unfortunately, this would have been a lie anyway if the British had won the Revolutionary War. It's disgusting. But that is why some Shawnee were joining the British.
Yes, and that was all throughout history, especially in the colonial era, there were native tribes that aligned with the American colonists.
Yeah.
Some that aligned with the British, some that aligned with the French, some that fought against everybody. So this was a common thing.
Yes. But in 1777, there was a Shawnee chief named Chief Cornstalk. And Chief Cornstalk, as far as I can tell, was a homie, and we loved the guy. He believed in neutrality between the American settlers and the British. But like I said, a lot of the Shawnee were on the British side. Now, at this point, there is a ton of back and forth technical, war stuff. And I'm going to be honest, that's not where I thrive.
Okay.
So I'm going to distill it. And basically what's going on is now where those insanely bloody battles where hundreds of individuals died that I was mentioning before, now there's a fort on it, and it's called Fort Randolph. And in Fort Randolph, they were imprisoning members of the Shawnee tribe. So Chief Cornstalk, trying to, quell all of these issues and trying to take care of it like a man, he arrived with his son, and he wanted to be great and connect and embrace the spirit of friendship. And of fucking course, he got imprisoned and eventually killed, and so did his son.
My God.
Yeah, so that fucking sucks. But interestingly enough, they say that as Chief Cornstalk was dying, he placed a curse on Point Pleasant and all of West Virginia. Now, I wonder about this because, as we've mentioned before, the whole, native burial ground / Native Americans giving curses and stuff like that. A lot of it can just be
Exploitative.
yeah, and just not accurate. It's like not all Native Americans are, like in tune with every single, it's like
right. It's a bit of it's a Hollywood cliche. Yeah. It's a Hollywood trope that has been used and abused for since the beginning of. I mean, even before Hollywood. I mean, it was that's been a thing, and it's like. What I think is funny about it's like what we say about Native American burial grounds. It's like, why does it have to be a Native American burial ground?
Right.
Like, don't fuck with anyone's grave.
Exactly.
Not just Native Americans can cast curses.
Yes.
So for whatever reason, it's a trope. We put all that on the Native population when, I mean,
it could be anyone.
Yeah, everybody can cast a curse.
Come on. But the reason I bring this up is because the Chief Cornstalk's curse, I wonder, because a part of me thinks, is this just kind of what we were saying a minute ago, or did he really do this? And I mean, it's in Appalachia.
And it's in Appalachia.
We know that there's something in the air there.
Maybe he did set down a curse, and maybe, Maureen, is this the genesis of the Mothman?
That's what we're wondering. And I also wonder, too, if even though he didn't set this curse, the fact that everyone thinks there's a curse maybe makes a curse.
You know what?
Kind of like a tulpa.
The idea of the tulpa, the idea of a thought form.
Yeah.
The idea of a collective belief bringing something into reality.
Yes.
Say like a Slender Man, something we know was born on internet forums, but many now claim to have had encounters with the Slender Man.
Yeah.
Perhaps this is something born into reality through our collective belief.
Exactly, Dylan. Thank you. Incredible. But it is worth noting, just to kind of lean in a little bit more to the possible, truly cursed situation. And I hate this. Chief Cornstalk's grave, his remains were moved 2 times. Just because settlers just wanted to build shit where bodies were buried.
Putting in a Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, Jesus. It's insane.
Putting in a Krispy Kreme in a strip mall. You gotta move them.
You gotta sell the donuts. Donuts make me go nuts. But here's the thing. And another thing that kind of makes me wonder about the curse is that there is a monument commemorating the Battle of Point Pleasant, and it has been struck by lightning twice.
Say what?
Yes. The lightning struck it twice.
Oh my God.
Come on. And these are some things that have happened in recent memory in the Point Pleasant area. In 1907, the worst mining disaster in American history happened in Mana, West Virginia, and 362 miners died, and the mine itself exploded.
Holy shit.
And I know it's like it exploded, I'm sure, because, something caught on fire, but they don't know the details. They don't know why it exploded still to this day.
That's insanity.
Yeah. In 1944, there was a tornado just north of Point Pleasant that killed 150 people. An hour outside of Point Pleasant, a plane crashed and killed 35 people. And then 2 years later, another plane crashed about an hour outside of Point Pleasant by flying into the side of a mountain.
Wow.
Yes.
Intentional?
No, I think by mistake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, 51 men died in a construction scaffolding accident where it collapsed during the construction of a power plant, keep that in mind, just north of Point Pleasant. Also, Point Pleasant's entire water supply was once heavily contaminated when a train derailed outside of town, and there were just chemicals all over the damn place.
Wow, not much has changed.
And there has been other contaminations to the water and the soil and the area. And of course, there is the Silver Bridge disaster, which we will be talking about later. Now, the first witness, or the first, main witness, not even main witness, just the first reported witness, we'll say, of the Mothman, was in 1961. A man was driving down the road at night when he saw a winged figure Eventually, it unfurled its wings, and it was massive. His wings took up the whole way across the road. And then it took off straight up into the sky, kind of like a helicopter. It didn't need to go forward to get momentum or anything. It just lifted up straight into the sky. This wasn't really talked about much, or it didn't really get much traction or anything like that. But after that, there were some strange things happening in Point Pleasant. There was poltergeist activity in many homes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
So we are talking prior to the Silver Bridge collapse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And people reported seeing walking trees.
Whoa. Okay, you'll remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Lord of the Rings, anybody?
Ever heard of it?
What?
There was also tell of people seeing cyclopses out in the woods. And outside of Point Pleasant, around this time, there was some weird activity as well, which is very, very interesting and kind of weird, but in a fun way. There were so many reports of absolutely huge birds, some humanoid, some bat-like, some just birds, and they were reported all over the place in California, Washington, Illinois. These are just a few examples. And I believe in Illinois, one of these beings, these creatures, cryptid, whatever, it allegedly flew down and picked up a small child before dropping it a few yards away.
I think I know where you got that from. What source you pulled that from?
What do you mean?
That sounds a little bit like something I wrote
Come on.
in the DePaulia
Oh, come on.
in April of 2020.
We do have fun here, and it's important to cite your sources.
Which, by the way, that article is no longer on the DePaulia, and I think it's because the article attracted many people to the comments section.
Yeah.
People who we love, but,
Yes.
regular everyday folk might describe as eccentric. And I think they 404'd my article.
Well, we need to revamp our website situation, and maybe we'll just pop it on there.
Yeah. I never got the paper, because it's also a printed paper.
Right.
I never got the physical paper, so dang.
What can you do?
Yeah.
But yeah, that is so fucking scary that could you imagine watching your child?
That was
your
in
kid.
Illinois.
Yeah, that was in Illinois. Your child, a human child, and not like a newborn baby. Like that would be horrifying too, but it's small. Like I don't remember exactly how old the kid was, but it was like
Yes.
8 or 6 or like not a baby.
It's there's a concept also from Native American lore known as the Thunderbird.
Yes, exactly.
Something we will cover in the future. And
Yeah.
is this similar to the Mothman? Is it the same? Is it something completely unrelated? We don't know.
We don't know. We just don't. At this time, we just don't know, but it is very interesting. What's weird is these sightings of these birds or humanoid birds or bat birds or whatever you want to call them, they connect with UFOs because a lot of the places where these things take place or they happen is where UFO activity also occurs. Also, we're seeing a lot of UFO activity over nuclear power plants.
Yes.
A lot of times UFOs are just floating above nuclear power plants. Sometimes people think that maybe the ship or whatever is charging, possibly.
Yes. Think back to our Roswell episode. We talked about that a lot.
Yes.
Another subject we covered, Maureen, an episode we covered in the past, the Van Meter Visitor. A mining town in Iowa was besieged by this winged creature who would emerge from the mines. A very big winged creature.
I know.
What some might almost describe as like a pterodactyl in a
Yeah.
way. Very similar, some people think, associated with the Mothman mythos.
Yeah. Maybe it literally is the Mothman, but it's just, it's presenting a little differently, or maybe it's, a homie. We don't know. But it is very fascinating. And once again, it just goes along with these caves and these mines in Appalachia. And it's something about it there, about the forest, and I love it. It excites me. I think that there's so much beauty that you can gather from there. And like, I love the, the customs of, the kind of, the witchery, kind of the folk witchery that happens around there. And I just love it. But anyway, now UFOs, Mothman, other strange beings, unknown lights, things like that, they are often accompanied with a awful smell, often like a smell of rotten eggs.
We often associate that with sort of demonic activity.
Exactly, especially red eyes. We kind of associate with demons. And it's interesting that the Mothman checked those boxes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because you might assume with all his extraterrestrial connections, he might smell more like ozone or it's interesting he would have almost a sulfuric rotten egg smell.
And not only that, a lot of people experience more extreme, physical symptoms other than just, smelling some nasty eggs. And this is a quote from my source, The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. Many I found suffered certain medical symptoms such as temporary amnesia, severe headaches, muscular spasms, excessive thirst, and other effects, all of which have been observed throughout history in religious miracles, demonology, occult phenomena, and contact with fairies. All of these manifestations clearly share a common source or cause.
Wow. I mean, from the mouth of Keel,
we love him, and we didn't really go into Keel. Keel essentially was like the Mac Daddy of Mothman, and also he, didn't really love that he was just known as the Mothman guy because he has done so much more than just research on the Mothman. He has done so much on Fortean or paranormal activity or whatever you want to call it, and he's some could call him the GOAT.
I mean, the man was a bona fide journalist.
Yes, which is great. And I just think it's so fascinating thinking about how a lot of these experiences, or whatever you want to call it, these beings, that they are very similar throughout history. They may look completely different, but it makes me think maybe they're kind of a part of the same journey, or they have the same desire. I don't know. It's very cool to see how we have interpreted this phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Now, let's really get down and dirty here.
Please, I'm ready to get down with the hogs.
Come on. Something that we have discussed before. Something that is honestly, it's a fan favorite.
Yes, we have, yes.
At 7 p.m. on November 2nd, 1966, Woodrow Derenberger, a man living in Point Pleasant, experienced something very interesting, and that is the Grinning Man.
Whoa. Or at least what we covered in our Grinning Man episode. Maybe the Grinning Man has a name.
I wonder if he does. I don't know. Very cool. And Woodrow Derenberger, we're going to call him Woody sometimes. Woodrow. We're going to have fun with it. He had a very interesting experience. And I'm quoting here. Woody was heading home in his panel truck after a long, hard day on the road. But then a car swept behind him and past him. Another vehicle seemed to be following it. He eased his foot on the accelerator. He had been speeding slightly and thought it might be a police car. The vehicle, a black blob in the dark, drew alongside him, cut in front of him, and slowed. Woody Derenberger gasped in amazement at the thing. It wasn't an automobile, but it was shaped like an old-fashioned kerosene lamp chimney, flaring at both ends, narrowing down to a small neck and then enlarging in a great bulge in the center. It was a charcoal gray. He slammed on his brakes as the object turned crossways, blocking the road, stopping only 8 or 10 feet from it. A door slid open on the side of the thing and a man stepped out. I didn't hear an audible voice, Woody later said. I just had a feeling like I knew what this man was thinking. He wanted me to roll down my window. The stranger was about 5 feet 10 inches tall, with long dark hair combed straight back. His skin was heavily tanned, grinning broadly, his arms crossed and his hands tucked under his armpits. He walked to the panel truck. He was wearing a dark top coat. Underneath it, Woody could see some kind of garment made of glistening greenish material, almost metallic in appearance. "Do not be afraid." The grinning man did not speak aloud. Woody sensed the words. "We mean you no harm. I come from a country much less powerful than yours." He asked for Woody's name. Woody told him. "My name is Cold. I sleep, breathe, and bleed as you do." Mr. Cold nodded towards the lights in Parkersburg in the distance and asked what kind of place it was. Woody tried to explain it was a center for businesses and homes, a city. In his world, Cold explained, such places were called gatherings. While this telepathic conversation was taking place, the chimney-shaped object ascended and hovered some 40 or 50 feet above the road. Other cars came along the road and passed them. Cold told Woody to report the encounter to the authorities, promising to come forward at a later date to confirm it. After a few minutes of aimless generalities, Cold announced he would meet Woody again soon. The object descended, the door opened, Cold entered it, and it rose quickly and silently into the night. And here's another experience that goes along with that. On November 4th, Darren Berger was riding with a coworker on Route 7 outside Parkersburg when he felt a tingling sensation in his forehead. Then thoughts from Mr. Cold began to spring full-blown into his mind. Cold explained that he was from the planet of Lanulos, which was in the galaxy of Ganymede. Lanulos, he said, was very much like Earth, with flora, fauna, and seasons. He had married a lady named Kimi and had 2 sons. Folks on Lanulos had a life expectancy of 125 to 175 Earth years. Naturally, there was no war, poverty, hunger, or misery on Lanulos.
Wow. So that happened 2 days before he met Indra Cold in the flesh.
No, 2 days after.
Oh, 2 days after. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And why Woody was on the road that night was he was a traveling sewing machine salesman.
That's right.
He was headed back from Marietta, Ohio to his home in Mineral Wells, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And that's when that happened.
Yes, very weird. And it's like, we're going to talk a little bit more about this situation here a little bit more as we go forward, but it's very interesting because some people really think that this is deeply connected to Mothman. And it seems like it must be, but at the same time, they seem separate.
Absolutely. And if you would like a very in-depth exploration of that encounter, check out our episode 81, The Grinning Man.
Yes.
We really dive into that specific encounter there on the road. Notice how cars passed by as if they couldn't notice this.
They can't see it. That's very interesting.
And notice he said, I'm from a country much weaker than yours.
Yeah.
Before he told him about Lanulos.
About the planet, yeah. Why do you think he did that? Do you know?
I don't know if he was just trying to soften the blow, but at the same
Yeah.
time, if he's already talking with his mind, I mean, what's there to soften?
Right. It is interesting. But yes, this is one of those things that it is huge in the paranormal world, and it has its little fingers and everything. Now, at this time, of course, outside of Woodrow Derenberger, there is a lot of weird activity going on still. All of the same things that we mentioned before, the poltergeist activity, everything. There was a lot of missing dogs, a lot of dogs running away, TVs acting weird, and already some possible men in black.
Yes, and I've talked about it on the Patreon, but Gray Barker was a man largely responsible, at least largely credited with the sort of introducing the world to the Men in Black mythos.
Yeah.
And also was talking about Mothman before Keel had published his book in 1975. Not that Keel wasn't aware of Mothman before then, but his book, which kind of made the Mothman part of the larger zeitgeist. Gray Barker was talking about that before Keel's book ever arrived.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so cool seeing how so many people really, are getting to it.
Absolutely.
Now, One night, 5 grave diggers were working. Why they were working at night, I don't know. Maybe they do that. But while they were grave digging, there was a large humanoid figure with wings flying high above them. Ken was the witness, and he said that it was definitely humanoid. It looked like a man with wings, and he said it was there for about like a full minute or more.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know why he didn't, tell his coworkers to look up, because he was the only one out of the 5 gravediggers that actually saw it.
Very interesting.
And I don't know if it's like he told them to look and they just couldn't see it, or if he didn't tell them to look because maybe he was kind of, entranced in it or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird, but it's interesting that before, the big hullabaloo happened, Ken did say that he saw a humanoid with wings in the area. So, I don't know. All right, now there's a very important locale in this story that we haven't gotten to yet, and it is the TNT area.
Yes. Boom.
Boom shakalaka. Now, the TNT area is a very strange place now, but it had a very specific purpose when it was built. So it was during World War II, and lots of states were, really everyone was getting in on the war effort and, manufacturing whatever they could and all of that. And in this area right there in West Virginia, it's just 6 miles north of Point Pleasant, the small town Point Pleasant, and they turned it into this place where it has kind of these above ground igloos. And they were built to store TNT and other kind of, wartime things. And the igloos were made of steel and concrete and, very official. And they had, ventilation, shafts on them. But they also were covered with dirt and grass and everything so that from flying above, it didn't really look like anything. It didn't look like a place that had a bunch of TNT.
I see.
So the West Virginia Ordnance National Priority List site is located near Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And it is an 8.3 acre site used by the Army from 1942 to 1945, the TNT area.
Wow.
It didn't just have TNT, it also had kind of TNT byproducts such as asbestos.
Yikes.
And I'm quoting directly from my source here. The EPA and state investigations revealed that the groundwater and surface water were contaminated with explosive nitroaromatics. Groundwater, seepage, soils, and the surface water on site are contaminated with explosive nitroaromatic compounds, including TNT, also including arsenic and lead. And at that time, visitors to the wildlife management area may be exposed to contaminants by direct contact or an accidental ingestion of contaminated surface water or soils. So that was, right after the war.
Absolutely.
So it was bad in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want that.
Of course not.
And it's interesting that the area is so contaminated. Like we said, it was also very contaminated earlier because of that train derailment.
Right, exactly.
Even in 1966 and now as well, the government and the higher-ups were all saying that now it was all fine and it's fine now, it's not contaminated anymore, it's safe. In 1966, I'm not sure about that. Today, yeah, maybe. But it's just, it's very interesting. So keep that in mind. That is the TNT area. Now that at 1966, the explosives are out of there and everything, it kind of became a hot spot for some canoodling.
Okay.
A little bit of nighttime activity.
Absolutely.
Keel himself said this about the TNT area. While the TNT area had witnessed many biological events over the years, it had no reputation as a haunted place. I just thought it was funny that he called it a biological event.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
He's talking a little bit of kissing. He's talking about a little bit of touch. A
little swap and a spit.
I mean, he's not wrong. It is biological.
Yeah.
So in the TNT area, is where our story really takes off.
Oh boy.
This is the first Mothman sighting that really got everyone in a tizzy. This is what really started it, even though there had been technically sightings before this.
Yes.
This is really the first, the big time.
This is the first event that launches the essential story.
Big time. So what was happening was there were two young couples, and they were just going out for a drive because, why not? And their names are Linda and Roger Scarberry and Mary and Steve Millette. And they were, just two young couples that, married, having fun, driving around at about 11:30 p.m. And they go over near the TNT area because they were looking for friends that maybe were going to be there, but it turned out they weren't there that night.
Both couples were in the same car?
Yes.
Okay.
They were in the same car. They were just driving four to a car.
Okay.
We love it. When they were driving around and they were, seeing the few homes that were right by the TNT area, they noticed that it was very dark. There weren't really a lot of lights on. It just was, kind of interesting. While they were going towards the old generator plant near the unlocked gate, Linda Scarberry gasped and looked ahead. And everyone looked ahead and saw two bright, glowing red eyes looking at them. Immediately, everyone in the car is beyond frightened. This is so scary. They can just see this black shape. They can't make it out quite well yet. It's in the shadow, but they can see the bright, glowing red eyes. Roger would later say, "It was shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6.5 feet or 7 feet tall, and it had big wings folded against its back." Linda said, "But it was those eyes that got us. It had two big eyes like automobile reflectors." Roger continued, "They were hypnotic. For a minute, we could only stare at it. I couldn't take my eyes off it." And that's something we hear all over the place.
Yeah, the hypnosis of it, the this quality that it brings you in. It's you can't look away despite your terror, despite maybe feeling at peace or feeling you can't look away.
And you can't, and often, like you were saying, it's paralysis. You can't move. You want to move. You try to move sometimes, and you can't. It's so interesting how that works and how we see it with alien encounters, with hauntings, with all sorts of things. And I just think it's interesting that the people are experiencing that here with the Mothman.
Absolutely.
They said, "It was grayish in color and walked on sturdy, man-like legs. It turned slowly and shuffled towards the door of the generator plant, which was ajar and hanging off its hinges." Finally, they were able to get out of their hypnosis or whatever it was, and they drove away. And they were all so scared. They were speeding along, going so fast. But then the being spread its bat-like wings and began following the car. They were going as fast as they could, maybe even 100 miles an hour. And this bird or humanoid or whatever you want to call it was able to keep up with them. And it wasn't flapping its wings. That's something that is interesting about the Mothman that is consistent through these encounters, is that even though he has wings, he doesn't flap his wings.
That's very interesting. That's a note I don't think I ever noticed.
Well, now you know. And what is interesting is that, and this is happening in this first encounter, but also in other encounters as well, is that it moves silently. When it's flying or floating or whatever, or walking or anything, it's completely silent. You don't hear much. But then eventually it does start to make a sound. It's almost kind of like a high-pitched mouse squeaking sound.
That's very interesting.
And finally, they were able to get away. They got far enough into the town, I believe, that this being stopped following them. And the four of them thought about it a lot, and they were not sure what to do, but they ultimately decided to go to the police and tell them all about this.
And it's funny that Derenberger's encounter with Indrid Cold, he told him to go report it. Remember that?
That's right.
That was so interesting to me.
That is weird.
He told him to go report it.
Yeah, that is. I forgot about that.
That to me is so wild. I don't think I have ever encountered, whether it's a UFO story, I don't think I have ever encountered where the being in question told the experiencer, the witness, to report it.
Right. We'll talk more about Indrid Cold, later in the ep, but I'm very curious and interested about that too, and I wonder why. It's interesting, and you'll see too in this story, and I'm sure it's true for many places, but a lot of people do not report it when they see this being,
not
or
at
they
all.
see a UFO, because especially with the UFO activity, a lot of the people are so used to it that they don't even really care anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
That's crazy.
That is wild. Imagine being so used to this activity that you don't think twice about it.
You don't even care. You're seeing bright lights flashing around in the sky and orbs in your backyard, and you just don't even say anything. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, as we know about Appalachia, you don't talk about it.
Exactly. They say if you heard something, no, you didn't. You don't go into the woods. If you hear your name, you didn't hear it. It's very... And I understand why they feel that way, because sometimes speaking about something gives it power. And I think we talk about that with like tulpas, or maybe the curse, the Chief Cornstalk curse,
yes.
or... I don't know, but at the same time, you need to talk about things because you got to figure it out. I don't know. I'm very torn about it, and I don't know.
And in some cases with hauntings, people say that if you give it attention, it gets worse.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you ignore it,
yeah,
it may be better, but it's not going to go away.
Exactly. That is, it's kind of, very interesting.
So I think it's like you got to get through the shit. You got to make it worse before it can get better. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the four of them got to the police station, and the police officers, when they heard the story at first, they kind of were like, oh, they must be drunk or, whatever. But they were eventually able to convince them that they were not drunk. They were not on drugs, and they weren't. And so, surprisingly, the police actually went along with them and went to the TNT area. Now, the police officer that was with them was Deputy Halstead. And Deputy Halstead's police radio, once they arrived at the TNT area, was completely acting up. Wasn't really working, or it was like making these really strange noises.
Sounds like what we've been hearing with TVs being on the fritz and stuff in and around this time.
Yes. It also sounded like a record or a tape being played at a very high speed.
Wow.
Which is weird and stresses me out. I don't like it. I don't like that feeling, hearing something like that. But I've also heard, and we'll have to maybe see if we can find a sound clip on YouTube to put up here, because I don't know what it sounds like either. But it's sometimes these witnesses are describing what they're hearing as it sounds like a phonograph slowed down.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I want to kind of know what that sounds like, because I don't know. So yeah, that is something we'll have to, if hopefully we can find something. But yeah, so either sped up or slowed down.
Very interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But after checking everything out, Deputy Halstead was convinced. And the next day, there actually was a press conference about it.
Okay.
And that's when it blew up all over the area. And just some anonymous copywriter was working on the story, was a big fan of Batman, and thought to himself, well, Batman's taken, so I'm going to make him the Mothman.
All right.
I think bats are much cooler than moths, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I hate moths, okay? I know they're basically butterflies, but I don't like them. They freak me out, and I don't have an explanation. The really big ones that have like patterns on their wings, but they are moths and not butterflies, literally make me feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel like I'm doing the sea monster episode again.
Interesting.
Anyway, here we go. Before we go forward and hear some more, information about what the heck is going on, I would love to read you some information about what Linda said about the encounter years later, I believe in 2002. It was about 7 feet tall. It had wings that were visible on its back. The tips of the wings could be seen above its shoulders. The body of it was like a slender, muscular man, and was flesh-colored. Its wings were an ashen white in color. The wings looked like angel wings. Its face couldn't be seen because the eyes simply hypnotized you when you looked into them. It had arms and legs just like a muscular man. It looked directly at us as if it was scared. It had one of its wings caught in a guide wire near a section of road close to the power plant and was pulling on its wings with its hands trying to get free. And it didn't make any sound that time we saw it. So there are a few differences in how she remembers it and what she said at the time.
Yeah.
Now, this does not mean that she's making it up.
Absolutely. Not absolutely not. I mean, it's doesn't imply she was lying or...
This is very normal. It's like a psychological... There is a ton of studies on it. You can look them up, but it's the human... what's the word? Like, our recollection for at least visuals, you know, aren't as good as we think they are.
Right.
You know, a lot of times when police are trying to find, you know, the perpetrator of a crime, they will ask the witness about what weapon they were using and what the weapon looked like rather than the face, because it's really easy to kind of get the face wrong. Or like sometimes I've noticed this too, just because I'm weird and I've done this before. Like if I'm walking down the street and I see someone and then like I walk for like 3 more steps. And then I'm like, I have no idea what color hair that person had.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like if you're not really focusing on it, you don't really see it. And then if you're if you are focusing on something, you can miss so many things around you.
Yeah.
And it changes over time, and maybe you can get a little influenced by what you hear of other people. But once again, I don't think she's lying.
Absolutely
I just think
not.
it's interesting to hear what she thinks. And I think it's interesting that she's more so kind of describing his wings as angel wings rather than kind of bat-like wings. And we'll see here, but Linda has a little bit more of, it seems like a soft spot for the Mothman.
Okay.
She, you know, feels like the Mothman is maybe lonely or trying to communicate, but can't communicate. Anything like that. That's kind of how she feels.
That's what's interesting, so interesting about the Mothman is, in many ways, yes, you could interpret this being as being malevolent, but in a lot of ways, there seems to be a lot of evidence that it is, at the very least, a neutral third party.
Yes.
Or a sympathetic being who is almost wanting to warn you about things.
Yes. It's like trying to, but it can't.
Exactly.
And Linda does bring up a good point. She says this often in her interview, is that she doesn't think the Mothman has any negative intent or that he's dangerous or anything, because if he wanted to hurt someone by now, he could easily do it. He could easily kill someone. He could easily injure someone, and he hasn't.
Yeah.
So she kind of thinks that he's here for something else and that he has no real interest in harming us.
Yeah.
Even though he may look frightening.
Absolutely.
And just a reminder that in the Bible, they always say that when people saw angels, they were scared.
They were scared. Yes. Numerous times, like in the Bible, or many holy texts, but people are described as falling to their knees in fear or covering their face like Saul on his way to Damascus. You know, it's, in many ways, they are terrifying beings.
Yeah.
At least in some forms. In some forms, they might present themselves in more pleasant, angelic ways. And I think even in the nativity story, the shepherds watching over their flocks by night, I think it says when the angel came to them, they were so afraid.
Yes.
Yes, I think the direct quote is they were so afraid or something like that.
I mean, it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
Now that the press conference happened, everyone is aware and knows about the Mothman. And this is when things really pick up and get crazy in the area. A lot more people are claiming to have seen the Mothman. And when I say claiming, I don't mean that they didn't and they're lying. I'm just saying we don't know, because I think oftentimes humans' brains, and this is not just what I think, this is, what is what it is. Hopefully I'm wording it correctly, but human brains are often trying to find patterns And if you have something on your mind and you know that something could be there, or that, you've heard of this thing that maybe your friend has seen, and you see something that kind of seems to complete a pattern and it might look like something, it'll trick you into thinking that maybe you saw that thing.
Very interesting.
But I don't think that's it for all of this.
Of course. Right.
I'm sure there were some people that thought they saw the Mothman that did not.
Yeah.
But I think there are plenty of people that did.
Yes. It's like we say about everything.
Yeah.
It's a little of everything. It's are there people who, truly believe they saw something, but maybe there is a real world explanation or a quote unquote rational explanation? Of course. Are there people who lie? And it's of course.
Oh yeah.
But then there's also people who genuinely saw the real deal. It's silly to pretend that it's all or nothing. They're either all liars or they're all telling the truth or they're all mistaken. It's silly.
It's like it kind of goes back to the kind of the very classist and very judgmental feeling, thinking like, oh, these hillbillies in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, they're all so stupid that they all think that they're seeing this thing. And it's like, that's so insulting. There, like I said in our High Strangeness of Appalachia episode, I've lived in or near cities my whole life, and there are so many dumb fucks I can't even tell you. It's insane.
Oh, yeah.
Dumb fucks are everywhere, and smart people are everywhere.
Everywhere.
So don't go start thinking that everyone in a small town in West Virginia is, fucking uneducated and, whatever. Another thing that hasn't really been acknowledged much in YouTube videos and things like that I've watched about Mothman. It is in, Keel's book, but in other places it isn't talked about much. And that is, a lot of these people saw the Mothman more than once.
Yes.
It wasn't just a one-time deal. And Linda, one of the 4 people that first, quote-unquote, first saw the Mothman, she was one of those people that had multiple encounters with him, or it, or whatever, them, or whatever we want to call it. I'm going to quote now her story. I believe this is her 3rd time seeing the Mothman.
Okay.
It was about a month after we first saw it, when we lived on 13th Street. The roof slanted down at an angle from the upstairs bedroom window. I looked out that window one night, and it was sitting on the roof, close to the window. It was sitting down with its arms around its legs, and wings folded around itself, like it was trying to keep warm. It had its head turned sideways, looking in through the window, as if it was curious. By then, I had figured out that it didn't want to hurt me. I could just tell by the way it looked at me. I was very curious and wanted to try to communicate with it, but I still didn't know what it was or where it came from, and I was a little scared of it still. It looked so lonely, but not scared anymore. It looked cold too. It was really cold that night. So Mothman's being a little bit of a pervert.
Oh, okay.
Just looking in ladies' windows. But also, I'm very much getting Dawson's Creek vibes.
Absolutely.
Like, I hate to say it, but sometimes these sound very romantic, and it seems like it's the beginning of a love story.
I know. If you put a little Polycole on it, a little bit of James Vanderbeek.
Especially they're on the roof. I mean, my God.
A little Joshua Jackson.
Oh, the king.
Little Katie Holmes.
We love them. Did you say Michelle Williams?
Not Michelle. Michelle Williams. Foley. I can't remember his last name, but he's awesome.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
He's the killer in Scream 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we love him.
We love the guy. A little later, we will have some maybe romantic, sexy stories about the Mothman.
Ooh.
Now, another detail about the Mothman that I really feel kind of interested in, but also kind of like, is that apparently the Mothman was very interested or drawn to blood.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The reason why we know this is because apparently John Keel, saw the Mothman above the town, or I don't know if it was like always around or if it was just there at the time for a blood drive, but it's like one of those like vans or trucks or whatever that does blood drives.
Right.
And it was above there. hanging out. And I guess it was more than just kind of like, a one-time couple-minute thing. It seemed like it was kind of, it was going for it.
Well, here's the thing. You think of that and you automatically assume it's something sinister.
Yes, but not necessarily.
But maybe because, donating blood banks and all that stuff are very good things. They save many lives.
If you can, please do it.
If this is a sympathetic being, maybe for whatever reason it was attracted to it, maybe it was helping it along, it was guiding it, or almost protecting it from a distance, like watching over it, or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? I'm just winging it here.
But it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily mean he's trying to drink blood.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but
it could.
When you're dealing with something supernatural and, it's hanging around near blood, I get it.
You gotta go for it. I'm sure some of you are a step ahead of me here. John Keel said that women are more likely to have a Mothman sighting, or really any kind of paranormal activity, but especially a Mothman sighting, if you're on your period.
Wow.
And I feel a lot of things about this because a part of me thinks... John Keel, sit down.
Yeah.
A part of me thinks maybe let's cool it.
Well, it's also
cool
a common cliche.
Yeah,
I feel like women's
you know.
periods are often become a focus, whether it's the Salem witch trials or a woman's period seems to often become like over-focused on. And it's like people kind of, do backflips trying to connect it to things.
Yeah.
And who knows, in some cases, maybe that's true. I don't know, but you're right. It does. There is not to maybe the level of like the Native American burial ground,
right.
But no, there is oftentimes these cliches or these tropes attached to that.
Yeah, and once again, I don't think this is what John Keel was saying. I'm not like hating on him for this because maybe this was the data that he had, and maybe it was true, or maybe it was a coincidence, or I don't know. But I don't like that when that kind of happens because it's always saying that a woman's period is bringing in something bad or evil. When it's like, why? I don't understand that in so many ways. Like it's going to attract bears or it's going to try whatever. And maybe it does sometimes, but it's like, dude, like, I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's just a lot. And once again, I'm not saying Keel necessarily was saying that, but it's weird. But like we said, at the same time.
Yeah.
Sharks.
Yeah.
That's a thing. That they will get you.
Right.
For that.
And that's, but I would assume that's just blood in general.
Yeah, true. That's true.
Whether it could even not even be human blood. It could be blood
that is true. Oh, like chum, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's just blood in general.
That is true. And also I am interested in it because, your period is kind of like the signaling of creating life and everything. Obviously it's that you're having your period, it means you didn't, but it's just like the idea of the cycle of you being able to create life. I wonder if maybe the Mothman or some other beings would be interested in that. I don't know. Now, we've talked about the Mothman, and we've heard from Linda saying that, she doesn't think that he is anything negative or anything like that. But I want you to imagine that you are in a dark, forested area, and all of a sudden, you see two red glowing eyes, and it starts coming towards you pretty fast, and it's making like weird, chirping, high-pitched squeaks. That's so horrifying. And you don't know what it is. I would lose my fucking mind.
And on top of that, you're on your period.
Oh my God, you have cramps. Also, it's 1966 you have your period. I don't even really know what they were doing in terms of tampon situation.
Yeah.
God damn. It's a lot to deal with. But I'm going to show you, I want to read you a quote from an eyewitness so you can see how scary it can really feel. I know people are laughing at us, but it's no laughing matter. We'll never forget this thing. It has affected our lives in many ways. I've kept going on nerve and sleeping pills. When it gets dark, I feel the fear creeping over me. When I go any place, I automatically look up and out of the windows. I am afraid to sleep at night, so I lay awake sometimes crying with fear. When I do go to sleep or go to bed, the lights burn all night. Even in the daylight, I'm afraid to be by myself. I walk around in my own house expecting to see that thing. I close my eyes, day or night, and I can see those red, fiery eyes staring at me. Every little noise scares me to death. I can stand in a crowd and hear people talking about us and laughing. People have said we were probably liquored up, but we were not. They go up there expecting to see it, but then they say they don't believe us. We have seen it and know what to look for, and we are constantly looking. Not because we want to see it, but because we're afraid we'll see it again. And that is going to wrap us up for Mothman Part 1.
Wow, Maureen Bogey, thank you for all of that hard research.
Of course.
And God, we have barely scratched the surface. It is only going to get weirder.
Oh, yeah.
And more terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
In Volume 2.
Big time.
Good golly.
I am so excited for you all to see what's coming in Volume 2. There is so much more strangeness and weirdness and things you've never even heard of before, but then a lot of things you have heard of before, and they're all intermingling. And it's just, it's good stuff. I'm excited for Volume 2.
Well, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind smooching with down at the old TNT area.
Ooh, baby.
Folks, give it on up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins, the Finished Face, V.L. Lundqvist, the Madman, Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth, the Oh-So-Suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude, Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand, Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud, Carl Staub, the Firestarter, Heather Carter, the Conqueror, Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, the Barbaric Andrew Barry, and the Mysterious Marcella. And speaking of the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, they recently, this is a little belated, but they recently had a birthday on August 26th.
Oh my gosh, yay!
So let's give them a little shout out, a little love. We love JP and...
oh my God, happy birthday! Yes, or belated, of course, but you deserve it in September, too.
Absolutely.
Just have another birthday. Have another party.
We are so happy to have you as part of the Creep Street family.
Yes, we love you.
Folks, once again, we are humbled and so happy to have reached 200 episodes without missing a single freaking week.
Oh my God, it's crazy. I cannot believe it, but I'm very grateful. I'm excited. And I'm like, I'm ready to go forward. I'm ready for... the next 200, the next 400, the whole thing. I'm looking forward to the future of Creep Street. It's gonna be good.
Creep Street forever!
Yes, and if you love the show, if you like the show, please leave a review, do a 5-star rating, post about us on social media, tell your aunt about us, anything like that. It just really helps the show, spreads the good word of Creep Street, and the world needs us,
Amen.
Woo!
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Bye.